Good evening, everyone, and happy Friday, happy Friday, happy Friday. It's a good day to be alive. Um, it's a good day to be alive. Happy Friday, and welcome to Cultivating Conversations. I am your host, Stacy T. Cultivating Conversations is a podcast. It's a safe space. It's a platform where we have thought provoking dialogue about all types of topics: life, love, the pursuit of happiness, everything in between. Hey, Darlene. And it's my hope that, as your host, that after every episode, every conversation that we have, that something is sparked in your mind, in your heart, in your spirit that will cause further conversation, um whether you have to reconcile with yourself, reconcile with someone else, whatever it is. I just want to see people out in these streets being whole and living their very best life. That is the whole purpose of Cultivating Conversations, to have the hard conversations about hard topics. So while I'm waiting for other people to join, and I'm going to start soon because it appears that I have a lot of content to cover. Did some research for you all, 'cause, I like to come with my research. But it's been a it's been a day, right? It's been a day. It's been a day. We're doing this live on the day that well, first, before I say that, let me just say I want to give my condolences to two people. Earlier this week, there is a hey Michelle, a fabulous queen, a black woman. Her name is Meadlin Charles. She went to Syracuse University, which is my alma mater. Alma mater. Hey, auntie. And Meadlin Charles, she was of Haitian descent. She was a carver. She did a lot. I believe she graduated from the School of Law in Syracuse. She was a MSNBC correspondent. She served on so many different platforms with giving her political insight. I believe she was on BET. She had her own podcast, and she passed away this week unexpectedly. Now, I didn't have the pleasure of knowing her, but she was only a couple of years older than me, and she was only a couple of classes ahead of me. She was 47 years old. So that's the thing that really kind of was like, we don't know what she passed away from. We do know that it was sudden. And it was a lot to take in because my school, and I know, yeah, people probably are sick of me, but I don't care. My school, Syracuse University, is like, it's in a predominantly white school, but you cannot tell us that we are not an HBCU within a predominantly white university, because we really conduct ourselves and carry ourselves as if we were in and are an HBCU. So we're really close. So you know how sometimes people are like, oh, all of those friends that you have on Facebook, you don't really know them. Now I legit know, like, the people that I'm friends with, that I went to school with, like, I know them. I spent 4 or 5 years with them. So this is not just like somebody that I like that I don't know. I'm closer to people that I went to college with than a whole lot of other people. Um, so it kind of stung a little, right? And then today, we all was hoping that our beloved brother DMX, whose name is Earl Simmons, pulled through with the battle that he had from last weekend, but he earned his wings today. And it was a lot, because I mean, who expects, we expect people to be okay. And if you know anything about DMX, you know that he battled with drug addiction. I saw a clip about him telling the story about how he got hooked on crack. That was his vice. He was 14 years old, and somebody snuck it into a blunt that was laced. The blunt was laced with crack, and that started his journey. But one thing about DMX, he loved Jesus. Okay, he loved Jesus, and I admire and I love the honesty and the authenticity of his love for Christ. Um his mistakes, his flaws, his vices were only outward what we all go through inward. Everyone is not addicted, to crack, but everyone has their thing. All have sinned and fallen short. But one thing about him is that he reached a sector of people that, and I'm not afraid or ashamed to say it, he reached a sector of people that the church did not. It's not that they could not, they did not, and he did. I was like just so over everything when I heard his prayers on his albums. It's just incredible. So, we're all, grieving his loss and, reminiscing on his music and who he was and how gentle he was, even though he was this rough, rugged. He really loved Jesus. And I really do wish that he would have pulled through so that we could see the fullness of who he could have been in Christ, but he was who Christ needed him to be. A lot of people won't agree with that, and that's okay, but one thing that I love about Jesus is that he uses people that people would discredit and would discount and would disqualify. And that is what I love. That's what I love about Christ, and that just makes me love God even the more, because how many people were praying, praying, they may not have been praying for salvation yet, but they were praying to a God that perhaps they never prayed to before. Like, we don't know where his witness that was intertwined in his music, where it's going to go. But it's a sight to behold. And I'm here for it. I'm here for it. Yes, I go to church, and yes, I am a minister of the Lord Jesus Christ, but I am not religious by any shape or form. And I've never bought into the tradition of doctrine that on a lot of levels is erroneous. But we're not here for that. It's another conversation for another day. We are here for episode 19. Before I get on my soapbox, we are here for episode 19. So for those of you who are just tuning in now, tuning in live, and you are back, welcome back. For those of you who are catching me for the first time, welcome. For those of you who are going to catch the replay, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, from wherever you're watching or listening from. So I wanted to do this series called The Missing Piece. And what really sparked this whole series, this topic, is what the events that happened. I think it's been 2 or 3 weeks now, with the relationship guru guy who made his living and his fortune off of prostituting the emotions and the hearts of women, especially Black women. Hey, Crown and Glory. And we found out that he was not the man that he was telling women that they need to look for. He was not the example. He wasn't doing any of that. So what I started thinking about was the plethora of men who are making their life's goal, their life's mission, their lifestyle, their life's fortune on the heartstrings of women. trying to tell women what they need to do, what they need to wear, how they need to look, how they need to do their hair, what they need to talk about, and all of these things. And it is something that people are realizing and hooked on the fact that the topic of relationships is something that brings in a lot of numbers. It brings in a lot of numbers. It brings in a lot of content. Why? Because everyone is looking to be loved, right? Everyone is, the Bible says it's not good for man to be alone. Everyone needs companionship. Everyone needs love. Everyone needs someone, it would be nice, right? And people are trying to crack the code, more so women. Women are trying to crack the code. They're trying to figure out, hey, Serena, what is it? Like, what am I doing wrong? What is it that I need to do? What am I missing? What can I do better? This and the third. And meanwhile, the answers are not necessarily in relationship advice and the things that you need to do to win the heart of a man or a woman, but it's, am I healed and whole enough to even be in a place and have the capacity to give and receive love. So we're running around looking for this missing piece. We're trying to crack the guy code. We're trying to do all of these things where a lot of the answers that we have are within us, and they're only things that we can answer. And a lot of those things can only be answered through us really doing some soul searching so that we can be better, because you can't gloss over hurt and pain and trauma and past and your ancestry and your family makeup. You can't gloss over that. Like no amount of love, no amount of social media clout, no amount of likes, no amount of sex, no amount of how big the ring is, how beautiful the wedding is. None of that is going to take away the deep-seated things, the voids, the holes, the gaping holes that we have. Only and not only Christ is going to. We can't pray it, shout it away. We can't speak in tongues, lay under the altar. God has put people and resources and things in place for us to dig deeper and be whole and healthy so that we can be a whole and complete person for the person. And then once we do the internal work, right? Once we do the things that we need to do to rid ourselves of the trauma and the unanswered questions and the pain and the anguish and all of those things that linger in the back of our mind, then we can start asking the questions about, how do I find my mate? How do I get myself together to, like, we got to stop putting the cart before the horse, because that is why there are a lot of divorces. Okay, so disclaimer, I am coming from a place of experience. I am not coming necessarily from a place of mental I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a psychiatrist. I do have counseling background. I'm currently in school, but I'm not a mental health therapist or anything like that. So I want to tell you that this can be a trigger warning. The whole purpose of tonight is for us to start the work, right? Cultivating conversations, cultivate good ground, plant the seed. Some plant, some water, is God that gives the increase. Anything that pops up, if you need to walk away, if you need to pause, if you need to watch this later, that's fine. But what I will say is, if you are feeling something and something is not right, that is an indication that there's something that you need to work on. So don't let this conversation stop tonight. Find a counselor. Find a counselor. Find a therapist. Jesus and a therapist is quite all right. It is all right. It is all right. Okay. It'll bless your whole life. I've mentioned the fact that I've been in counseling twice, as recent as the entire academic year of 2019 to 2020. Now, that bout was for a class that I was in. And this class that I was in, the prerequisite for passing was you had to do counseling, because as a minister, as a preacher, you cannot preach and minister and pour into somebody else from an empty place. And you surely can't give other people advice from a place where you have not conquered yourself, or you're at least doing the work. I was only supposed to take 5 sessions, and I ended up being there for like 7 months, like the entire academic year. It was the year that my mom passed away. I was homeless. It was just a lot going on. And then the pandemic hit. Okay. So it'll bless your life. All right. So I just wanted to give that disclaimer that this could be a trigger warning, because tonight we're talking about daddy wounds and mommy's scars. That is what we are talking about tonight. The missing piece. We're talking about the missing pieces in our lives that prevent us from attracting and maintaining healthy relationships, predominantly romantic relationships, but it also goes into platonic family relationships. There are pieces that are missing from our life, and we don't understand it. We gloss over it, and we think that because we have the job, we have the house, we have the cat, we have the dog, we have the car, we have, whatever. You may even be dating, like everything is good, but there's something missing. And whatever is missing, that hole, let me tell you something, the trauma will show up and be like, hey, what's up? I'm here to tear up everything. Okay. I've seen it in action. I've lived through it. Okay. I've lived through some things. So tonight we're talking about daddy wounds and mommy scars. Why? Because one of the issues with the whole, especially with women seeking advice from men, is because there is this hidden and psychological thing where we desire a male presence. We desire a father figure. We desire to be fathered, especially if we were not fathered. Now, fathered, listen, doesn't necessarily mean that the father wasn't in the house, because you can have a 2-family house that is toe up from the flow up. So 2 people in the family, in the household, doesn't necessarily mean that that's a healthy household. Okay. So a lot of women, and I think that's why a lot of women who have gotten trapped in following these men on social media and giving them all of these views and likes and buying their books and going to their conferences and things like that, because I'm going to say we, because I don't want to, sound like I'm doing the finger pointing, even though I don't subscribe to those types of channels, because it's just something about it that never sat right with me. But for the whole purpose, I'm going to say we as women, we gravitate to that because we're looking for father figures. Okay. We're looking to be fathered. We're looking for that father, big brother, whatever. And we get sucked into that. Okay. But we have to understand that father wounds, parent wounds, they're real. They are real. They will show up in our teenage years, our adolescent years. They show up in our adult years. They show up in our dating. They show up in our marriage. How many men do we know who are emotionally detached from women because they were taught by their daddies or taught by their uncles the erroneous ideals about how to treat a woman? How many women, they didn't use the term smash back then, but how many women you smashed, how many women you had sex with, that determined your manhood. The younger you lost your virginity, that's when you became a man. I love your mother, I love your aunt, but then you ride it around with your father and your uncles, and you're watching them pick up other women. This is what men have been taught. So now they become older, they become men, they are grown males, but they don't matriculate into manhood because they are still stuck at the place of their growth and development that was stagnated by learning that was not there. And then for the daughter, your father is supposed to be your hero. Your father is supposed to be the first image of Christ that you see in your house, hence him being called the priest of your household. And two, he's supposed to be the prime example of what you are to look for in a spouse. What kind of man are you supposed to look for? What are the things? Be a provider like my daddy, love me like I watch my daddy love my mommy, protect me like he protected my mommy and how he protected me. Those are the things that you're supposed to look for. But if daddy is not there, that leaves us with a blank canvas, which is dangerous. Blank canvases are good in its proper context, but when you are a young girl and you're growing and you start developing and you start liking boys, like it's just innate. It just happens to us. And then you start having questions, and then you don't have a guide of what that man is supposed to look like, how he's supposed to act, how he is supposed to approach you, the things that he is supposed to say, the way that he's supposed to act. If you don't have that, it's free game. It's free game. And so many of us women have gone through that, not even realizing that we have those father wounds. So what is a father wound? A father wound is a deficiency or absence of love from your birth father, whether intentional or unintentional. Now, here's the caveat, and I want to say this before I go any further into the father wounds and I go into mommy scars. Listen, what we have to understand is that my bishop used to always say, we do not have a rehearsal for this life. There's no rehearsal. There's no do-overs. You get one shot. There's no manual. There's no guide. There's no list of rules. We can try as much as we can to think that we're going to do things right, but we're going to error. We're going to error. And what we need to understand is that our parents, the further up you go up in ancestry, what we have to understand is they did not have the resources that we have now. Therapy wasn't a conversation. Talking about our feelings was not a conversation. Our parents grew up in the era of you be seen but not heard. You know where that comes from? Slavery. Do you know that there are a lot of things that we have inherited that came directly from slavery, but we haven't been courageous enough to have those conversations to say, we thought that we was doing right, but we didn't get this right because it was a learned behavior. Slave masters told slaves to be seen and not heard. Slaves had to get permission to speak, to walk, to get up, to go to the bathroom during a church service. Okay? These are the things that took place, and it was passed down. So our parents and our parents' parents and our parents' parents' parents, they did what they knew based on what was taught to them. So while, yes, there is a level of accountability that needs to be had, there's also a level of compassion. There needs to be a level of compassion that is extended. There is an olive branch that needs to be extended. Now, listen, there's a meeting ground. There's a meeting ground that needs to be where we need to meet between the older generations and the younger generations. There's a huge gap. And there is some apologizing that needs to happen. Is it going to happen? I don't know. It probably does happen in certain circles and behind closed doors. I don't know, but it needs to happen in order for us to heal properly. But until and if that happens, let's just understand that. Let's take things into perspective before we start lashing out at our parents and grandparents who do not understand the premise of apologizing, when parents never apologize to their kids. Like this, where we're living now in this era with my children, we have open communication, we have open conversation. I don't do the you listen to what I have to say. And well, okay, wait, let me tell you. You do listen to what I have to say, right? I do have the final say because I'm the parent. Excuse me. But you have a voice. You deserve to be heard. Because how many parents who are in their 60s and 70s and 80s are still living with trauma that they have passed on to their children, who have passed it on to their children, who have passed it on to my generation, who are now, God forbid, but in some circles, yes, passing it on to future generations. Okay. So we're on a tangent. Father wound is the deficiency or absence of love from your birth father, whether intentional or unintentional. Okay. These are the consequences of father wounds. Okay. Low self-esteem and low confidence. All right. This can mean often blaming yourself for anything that happens, especially, this is from a child, blaming yourself from anything negative that happens, especially if it's not explained. There's this thing called an inner critic, where you ever hear sayings about us being our worst enemy, and the worst like opinion is between your two ears, meaning like your mind, the mind is a battlefield, all of those things. Our inner critic will tell us things about ourselves that other people on the outside will probably never get a chance to tell us. Why? Because if we don't have anything to reconcile against what we're feeling, then we'll end up making up things because it makes sense to us. And as a child, I don't know why it happens. I would have to get my good sis, Gidget Smith, to talk about that one of these days, why it happens where the child automatically thinks that it's their fault. I dealt with that with my oldest when her father and I were getting a divorce, and I kept reiterating to her and telling her that it wasn't her fault. What happened was between her father and I. And I kept reiterating that because I knew it was something that I had to keep saying, because I heard that that's what children resort to. But I didn't realize how true it was, because she grew up for a lot of years thinking that she did something wrong to drive her father away, and it wasn't the case. So low self-esteem and low confidence, and those are things that travel with you. Those are things that travel with you unknowingly. Okay, you become an adult, and low self-esteem and low confidence. You think that every man that you are with is going to leave you, or if you're a man, you think that the woman is not going to stay because the father left. So it's abandonment issues. Like all of these things tie into it, and God forbid somebody does abandon and they break up with you, or they ghost you, or they leave you. It gets tough. Okay. Another consequence is anxiety. Okay. Emotionally absent fathers equals I am not good enough. Okay. Again, like I said, emotionally absent fathers doesn't necessarily mean that the father is not in the home. He can be in the home. He can be physically a part of the child's life, but not emotionally present. And what that is telling, especially for girls, for young girls, is that I'm not good enough. And even for boys, fathers are so important. Both parents are very important. I'm going to get into mother wounds as well. But yeah, emotionally absent fathers equals I am not good enough. And those emotions can bring about loss, feelings of loss, anger, and shame. It is the anxiety. Here's how the anxiety kicks in. You try to suppress the loss and the anger and the shame. And that builds anxiety. I did not, and this, when I was doing my homework for you guys and getting this together, I was like, this is the lie. And yes, especially puberty, when those hormones hit, because that's what happened with my oldest. Once she hit puberty, I mean, ages 14 to 17, 16, she's like, from ages 14 to 16, I legit had bald spots. It was crazy. It was crazy. And here is the caveat. I want to say this before I go any further. We have to really be careful how we try to diagnose what is happening with people, whether they are young or old. We don't know what the paper trail is. We don't know when the trauma happened and when the aftermath of it kicked in. And we have, as human beings, this really, really bad habit of hearing something that happens with someone and casting our judgment and our opinion, even if it's something that didn't directly affect us. Now we're holding grudges with people. That's a really, 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 really big pet peeve of mine. Because you don't know what it was. Everyone who does something that is unseemingly, 9 times out of 10 is not because they want to. It's because something is missing. There's a missing piece. So it would behoove us to be a lot more gentler with people, especially children. Okay? Especially anybody. Just give the grace that you expect. Okay? All right. Another consequence of father wounds is low mood or depression. And that is as a result of internalizing your anger. Another consequence is too rigid of boundaries. So what does that mean? If the father was unreliable, not showing up, or absent, you decide to not let people close to you. Okay? This can happen with males as well as women. Okay? It can happen where I don't want to get anybody close to me because I don't want to be let down. I don't want to be disappointed because my father left and he didn't come. He always promised me that he was going to come and show up, and he was going to take me to basketball practice, and he was going to show up at my football games, and he was never there. So don't promise me nothing. Matter of fact, I'm not going to even take what you're saying for face value. I'm only going to take it for face value because, everybody else left me. So what makes me think that you're going to stick around? And then you live your life and you live in your relationship or your marriage like that. And you never give a person all of you. Why? Because you haven't dealt with that piece that was missing from your father that you didn't deal with. Okay. Too rigid boundaries, too loose of boundaries. What does that mean? No boundaries provided by the father or the mother. Okay. So you feel that you need to be available for everyone else to make them happy. It's people pleasing. All right. You have a hard time saying no because you were never taught how to. And this is especially important for women. Okay. Because oftentimes we're the ones that should be saying no a lot of times, and we're not. Like, no, I don't really like you. No, I don't want to go out with you. No, I don't think this is a good idea. No, I don't think that you should be sliding up in my DMs and you're married. No, I don't think that you should be flirting with me. No, I don't think that you should be trying to call me and text me. No, I don't think this is right. No. And we don't know boundaries because we weren't taught. So we get caught up in things that we do not want to get caught up in. We get caught up in things that we know are wrong, and under normal circumstances we would not find ourselves in, but something hit that spot of vulnerability, and then we find ourselves in situations where we don't know how to say no. We don't want to cause any ruckus and cause any issues, and we don't know how to get out of it, and then all hell ends up breaking loose, and then we're in a situation and then it's really bad. Okay, because nobody taught us boundaries. Nobody taught us that you, even though a man chooses you, you have a right to choose him back or not. Let me say that again. Even though a man chooses you, you have a right to choose him back or not. The Bible says, "He that findeth a wife findeth a good thing." But I may not be your good thing. And you may be using that scripture out of context, because I may not be that thing that you're looking for. It may be somebody else. We got to learn how to say no. We got to learn how to say no. For a man that did not know boundaries, that saw his daddy and his uncles out here dipping and dabbing. You in a committed relationship, you're in a marriage. But a woman slides up in your DM because she think you're cute. She could know that you're married, but you don't know how to say no. She doesn't know that you're married, but you still don't know how to say no. Either way, you don't know how to say no. Why? Because nobody taught you that your wife is your prize. She is your rib. She is your woman. She's the one that you're supposed to cover and protect. And not only financially, but also emotionally, and also physically, and also, in a way that she is secure when you're behind her back, just as much as when she's in front of you, that she knows that you're going to have her back. Learning how to say no. And when you don't have boundaries, okay, think about your life growing up as a child. Were you taught boundaries? Were your boundaries so rigid? Okay. That you grew up around a bunch of religion and you couldn't do anything, and now you don't know what to do, you don't know how to live, and now that's a whole nother topic. So too rigid boundaries, too loose boundaries. Having relationships with emotionally unavailable partners. Now I'm going to read this, okay? Because I'm going to read this. All right. Having relationships with emotionally unavailable partners. We're talking about us tonight, okay? We're talking about finding the missing piece in us. We're not talking about 5 steps to find your spouse, 4 prayers to pray for your spouse, where you need to be, what you need to do, where you need to go, what you need to have on, how you need to have your hair. No, we're dealing with us, because we're never going to be in a position and be in the right placement to be found by a purpose partner, person that God has for us, if we don't deal with us first. And we're not going to be ready to give the person that God has for us the love that they deserve. It's not only about us finding love, it's about us being at full capacity to be able to give somebody else that love. Okay? So having relationships with emotionally unavailable partners. When this happens because we seek the same dynamic in our relationships as we experienced in our childhood. So, what does that look like? If you're a woman and you are used to men talking at you, talking down to you, you were used to men being toxic because your father was toxic, and you think that that's love. That's an emotionally unavailable partner, and you are trying to create the same dynamic because that's all you know. If you are a man and the woman is she's too nice, and you want a toxic woman because your mother was toxic, because she taught you all of these things, You're trying to create the dynamic of your childhood. I remember somebody, it was, okay, no, okay, I'm not gonna go there. We try to create the dynamic that we have been used to in our childhood. And we have to be careful with that. We have to be careful with that because we can possibly and potentially miss out on a great person because they don't look like what we are accustomed to. Meanwhile, what we are accustomed to is raggedy as all get out. But because we are accustomed to it, that's what we want. And it's not good for us. Okay. You may have an unconscious wish to repair the early father wounds by having a relationship with a person that creates similar and familiar feelings within you as you experienced in your childhood. What can this look like? Taking on a project, taking on a man who is broken, who has potential, and because he unconsciously favors the father that I once knew, now is my opportunity to be Barbara the builder and fix this man so I could feel like I've vindicated myself in fixing my father, even though he's not my father. That is as exhausting as it was me saying it. I was tired just saying that. Here's the thing. No one is perfect. Okay. Everyone comes with baggage. Everyone comes with something. I'm a firm believer that you are going to be as complete as you can be to complement that person. Okay. But there's going to be an essence and a part of you who will continue to be whole when you're with that person. Okay. What do I mean? And this is something that I learned. Me being by myself, I'm cool. I'm cool. I've done the work. I've done the healing, the counseling, the soul searching. I've done all of that, right? I'm fine by myself because I'm not going to hurt myself. I know what makes me tick. I know what I like. I know what I don't like. But when you get with somebody else, that's a learning curve. So there are things that they may do that you don't like. That, okay, there may be things that he would do that I don't like, right? There may be triggers that he sounds off that he doesn't know, but I know. But that means that there's still some work. It doesn't mean that I'm completely broken, but it just means that the person that I'm with is a buffer. Okay. So I say all of that to say that no one is perfect. However, you got to be careful with taking on human projects. Projects are for school. Art classes for children. Nobody deserves to rebuild or build a whole man or a woman. Nobody deserves a woman. A man doesn't deserve a woman who comes with all of these broken pieces and trust issues and things like that. Now, there are things to work through always, always. But I'm talking about somebody that is just completely toe up. Lest the Lord says, this is the person that you pour into, yea and amen. But a lot of times we unknowingly take on these things because we're trying to resolve something from our past that we haven't resolved, and we're trying to resolve it in somebody else. And it's not fair to them, and it's certainly not fair to us because we exert so much time and energy trying to rectify and reconcile something that is happening with us through somebody else. And that's not their battle. It's ours. That's why we're here tonight. I did too, sis Serena. I did too. And I did it because by default, I'm a nurturer. I'm a nurturer. Um, I know that I have the gift of marriage. I know how to nurture and do all of those things that a wife is supposed to do. The problem was that I was doing it for the wrong people, and I was doing it for the people who did not have the capacity to hold all of who I was. And I had to learn that the hard way. I got it now, but I learned it through a lot of hurt that was unnecessary, but it was necessary because I would not have had the awareness that I have now if I had not had those right. If I didn't have those experiences, I wouldn't be as aware as I am now. Okay. The last one, we often gravitate, we're talking about having relationships with emotionally unavailable partners. Okay. This is another consequence of father wounds. We often gravitate towards something that feels familiar because at least we know what we are dealing with. Being in a relationship with someone consistent and reliable can feel potentially and emotionally threatening. Being with someone consistent and reliable can feel potentially and emotionally threatening. Have you ever heard somebody say you're too good to be true? Like something has to be wrong with you because you seem like you dot all of the I's and cross all of the T's. Typically, that's a person who is not used to being treated well. And we have to get to a place where we are fully convinced that we are deserving of being treated well. I deserve to be treated well. I deserve love that is not traumatic. You deserve love that you don't have to stand at the altar or be, somewhere and your husband has the testimony of, yeah, I put her through hell, but she's still here. It isn't, no, 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 no. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And I had this conversation with somebody and I told them like with with everything that I've been through, I'm no, I'm not trying to marry anybody that's closely nowhere near related to my father. Okay? Let me give you a little and be transparent because I don't want it to seem like I'm coming from a place where I just picked up all of this great information and I'm speaking from a place where I know I my face will talk for me before I open up my mouth. I be trying to work on it, but pray for me. My father, he died when I was 9. Um and he was a troubled man. He was a troubled man. He was abusive. He was abusive to my mom. And I didn't find this out until I was well into my 30s. And I had nobody to talk to about it. Um, I had nobody to talk to about it. And it wasn't until I went to therapy that I could talk to my therapist about it because there was nobody to talk to about it. But it bothered me because I started to think about the choices that I've made in relationships and the type of men that were drawn to me. And it's not because like I used to say, like, do I have an infrared something like what? But I had to reconcile with that and do the heart work, heart, Heart work to reconcile with that so that I can be cautious without missing out on something because I was afraid that I was going to meet someone like my father because I'm not my mother. You get one time and you better strike. You better strike. because that's going to be the first and the last. Okay. So I was afraid, and I'm like, I don't want, so it was just so much, but I had to work through all of that so that I wouldn't carry that with me. You understand what I'm saying? So that's an example. That's an example. So those are the consequences of father wounds. I'm at 50 minutes already. Good Lord. Okay. So we're going to talk about mother wounds. Why? Because it's something that we don't talk about. We put all of the ownership on the father, and yes, there is a lot of ownership that belongs on the father because he's supposed to be the priest. He's supposed to be the head of the house. He's supposed to be the one that sets the temperature and sets all of that stuff. But mothers have responsibilities as well. And here's the thing: mommies have scars because of father wounds. So if you show me a mother who has a scar, I will show you the father or the husband or both that created the wounds for her scars. And again, because as women, we didn't, especially back then, we didn't have a lot of resources. We didn't have a lot of outlets. The idea was, you just, no matter what happens in your marriage, you just stay there. You stay there and you stick through it to death do you part, and that is it. So mommy may have stayed, but it was toxic, and it was tragic, and it was traumatic. And some way, somehow, what she was feeling and what was happening in the house between her and daddy seeped out some way, whether it was her emotions, whether it was how she disciplined you, taking out her anger and probably beating you harder than you would have cared for, not necessarily because of what you did, but because of how she was feeling and she needed to get that aggression out. Or maybe the things that she instilled in you, son or daughter, that caused you to now grow up with this mindset that is and has been toxic, that prevents you from having relationships and maintaining relationships. We can't forget about mommy's scars, because a lot of times mommy's scars is as a result of either her daddy, her mama, or her husband. And who suffers as a result? The children. Again, not an indictment, because we only know what we know. But we know growing up how things have been. You stay in that marriage, you stay there, you suck it up, you still do whatever, no matter what is happening. And then we create this vicious cycle. So either the daughter goes out looking for a man based on the way she watched her daddy treat her mommy, or she says, I don't want no parts of no man at all. I don't want to get married. Let's lay down. You give me a baby. You can go on about your business. You know how many women we have that, because men prove themselves to not be reliable. We are in generally speaking, there are great marriages. There are so many great marriages. People have been married 50 years, 60 years, and not 50 years of trauma and turmoil, like legit happy. There are people who are newly married. Marriage is beautiful, but we cannot discard the other side of it and the trauma in some of the marriages and how it has caused a breach in our wholeness. And again, we're running around trying to be booed up, and we got all of this gunk and all of this toxicity that we've been carrying, and we don't even know it. Okay, so we got to talk about the mommy scars. Okay, Here is how mommy scars can look. Okay. We're talking about the mother. All right. Mommy had to take care of the physical needs of the children, but didn't give love, care, and security. She was so busy taking care of the children that she didn't give love, care, and security. Maybe it's because she was busy at work and always gone, or maybe because she was emotionally attached, because she was hurt, because daddy left. Daddy left, the husband left, daddy left, and now I got to take care of these kids. And she is my. I hope y'all don't hear my stomach growling. I'm hungry. I'm sorry. Um, and now she has to do all of the. She has to take care of all of the provisions, and now she's not loving, she's not caring, and she doesn't give that security. And the security is, I'm not talking about the shelter and the food. That is taken care of because that's what she's doing. But the security of knowing that mommy has your back, you can come and talk to me about anything. I will carve out time. Let's have like a mother son day. Let's have a mommy daughter day. Let's do fun things. Let's take time out. Let me listen to you. Let me talk to you. Let me hear you. She didn't do that. Okay. It's because she has some scars that she has going on. Or she didn't provide empathy to mirror the child's emotions and help them label and manage those emotions. Okay. Didn't provide empathy to mirror the child's emotions and help them label and manage those emotions. When you go through something like divorce, and I'm going to speak specifically to divorce because it's harder than, in my opinion, a death, there is some type of closure there most times, depending on what's happening. But with the divorce, you know, there's a parent has to deal with their hurt. They have to deal with, and I've talked about this before in past episodes, they have to deal with the continual cycle of having to relive different emotions all the time because they have to see the parent. And you can get so caught up in trying to manage your feelings that my stomach is really growling, that you are reluctant to deal with your child's feelings. If it's a son, man up. Like that thing that I can't stand. Big boys don't cry. Like, you don't cry. You know, as a female, you don't cry. You got to be strong. The strong black woman, you know, you got to be strong. You got to be strong. You got to be strong. You're not showing empathy to your child, so your child doesn't have empathy. How many of us never received empathy from our parent, from our mother, who wouldn't allow us to sit in those feelings and process those feelings? And that's because she didn't know how to process it. She got to process and try to make sense of everything, and she still got to go to school, got to go to work, got to pay the bills, got to take out the garbage, got to wash the dishes, got to do hair, got to do cook, clean, run errands, try to take care of herself. It's I don't have time to be empathetic with you because I'm trying to get my feelings together so that I can support you, not knowing that me actually supporting you is being empathetic with your feelings. These are the things that we as adults have dealt with our parents, that creates the breach of wholeness in us, that prevents us from being able to be in a place where we can receive and find love. Okay. Didn't allow the child to express negative emotions. Okay, this is a big one, and I kind of spoke to it a little while ago with the be seen not heard. Like, I don't want to hear what you have to say. You know, I made sure that my children were very vocal based on how they felt, based on what they saw, okay. When I was going through my divorce, I made sure never had conversations about my children's father in front of them. I had conversations because I had to vent. I had to vent, but my children were not the ones that I vented to. They had no business knowing at young ages um what I was going through. Okay. They got to a certain point where, they asked questions and things like that. And we had conversations. The whole notion of what happened between me and your father is none of your business. It gets to a certain age where we can't do that. I would advise you not to do that because the child is going to live their entire life wondering what happened and wondering how can I prevent this from happening in my life? Because I don't want to be left. I don't want to hurt. I don't want to deal with heartbreaking brokenness, but they won't know unless you tell them. They won't know unless you tell them. How many of us have had the conversations with our parents? I never got a chance to have a conversation with my mom about, what happened with my father. I couldn't bring myself to do it because I knew that it wasn't something that she could she I knew that she wouldn't talk about it. So I had to deal with it and talk to a therapist and things like that, but I had to talk to somebody. But how many of us are still walking around with things that we want to say to our parents in a respectful manner, that we can't say, or we have tried to have those conversations and they went awry because our parents are not in a place where they are strong enough to accept constructive feedback and own the fact I dropped the ball. I didn't necessarily do it right and I didn't know to do it right. I'm sorry. And if I could do it all over again, I would do it differently, but I can't. And for that, I apologize. And this is what I can tell you now to help heal you and to make sure that the cycle doesn't continue with my grandchildren. Okay. Um, yes. And you know what, Serena? My oldest was 9 years old when I spoke with her. And she asked me some crazy questions, but I answered them in a way where she could understand at 9 years old and in a way that was not and would not be degrading to her father. And then as we got older and she started to see more things, we started to have more conversations. And that's just what it is. Because my thing is, I'm not going to raise daughters who are broken. I can't. I watch them suffer enough. I'm not doing it. So we will have those conversations, and I will allow them to express how they feel respectfully, but truthfully, and that just be that. Um, and that it's just healthy. It's just healthier that way. Um, yeah. So what else? Um, Mother wounds. Expected the child's support with their own physical or emotional needs. So a mother is expecting the child to be empathetic and sympathetic with what is happening with the mother, but the child doesn't have the capacity to understand all of that, even at a teenage level. She doesn't have the capacity, and that just goes back to what I'm saying about how you should not give your child that burden of talking to her like she's your homegirl or your son. Talking to him or her like they're your homegirl, and you don't understand that you are depositing something that can potentially become poisonous to them and shape how they grow up and how they see relationships in the future. Um Yeah, and they're going to continue coming. They're going to continue coming, Serena. They're going to continue coming, and you answer them as best you know how, being truthful without, being malicious. Because there is a way to do it. There's a way to have a cultivating conversation. See how I just did that? There's a way to have a cultivating conversation with your child and it not be degrading. There's a way to do it. Okay. It does come with much prayer and much wisdom, but it can be done. So what else? The mother had suffered emotional or physical abuse themselves, didn't process the trauma, and wasn't therefore able to offer love and nurture. Again, the vicious cycle, because in years past, in decades past, we wasn't talking about mental health. We wasn't talking about therapy. Counseling was of the devil. If you was going into counseling, that meant that you was crazy. So it was taboo. So there's so many women who were in their 50s, their 60s, their 70s, their 80s that go to their grave that have unprocessed trauma because they were taught by family, by big mama and them, that whatever goes on in this house stays in this house. They were taught by the church that you just shout and you just let the Lord handle it. Let the Lord handle it. Let the Lord handle it. Let the Lord handle it, as if he didn't handle enough on the cross. Sorry. Let me take some water. As if he didn't handle enough on the cross. As if he didn't write or allow, inspire a whole book that gives us a guide on how to live this life and do things in a proper manner. He gave us the rule book, but we want to hide behind things and this unprocessed trauma, and then we pass it on. And then when our children come to us and want to have a conversation, we don't want to have one, but we're not understanding the damage that we've done. It's not disrespectful for your child to come to you and say, listen, I just want to talk to you about some things, and I want to know, like, I'm not talking about you coming at your parent sideways and disrespectful, but having a conversation. And if they're not ready to have a conversation, that's a whole nother conversation. But that's why I'm saying therapy is so important, because everyone, and this is just the fact of the matter, every parent is not going to be able to receive the constructive feedback or the mirror being held up to them to say, like, listen, there's some things in my childhood that I don't understand. It has shaped me as a man, as a woman. This is how you was there. This is how you didn't show up. And I just want to let you know how it affected me. Every parent is not going to be able to handle that. Okay. You have to understand that. But here's the thing. That doesn't give you the right to lash. Get the help that you need, because the important thing then is not only dealing with the hurt, but is making sure that you don't continue that vicious cycle. At some point, it's not even about them anymore, because if they're not going to deal with it, there's nothing that you can do. It's up to you to deal with it so that you can be in a place to receive healthy love and to be able to give healthy love. And then you don't bleed on other people, or that ain't nobody cutting you up and slicing and dicing your emotions in your heart, and then you're passing it on to children. Okay. It's up to you to do that and take care of that. Maybe the mother had an untreated mental health condition, maybe experienced alcoholism and drug addiction. And listen, those things can come from all of the things that I talked about earlier, about the father and the absent and not being there and having a coping mechanism, whether it's sex, drugs, alcohol, shopping, whatever. It can be any of those things, and they didn't deal with it. They didn't deal with it. Okay. So I wanted to read this last thing that I got from danielpacini.org. Okay. And it's talking about father wounds in marriage, but it can be father and mother wounds, but it's talking about marriage. And this is why I'm going back to the beginning, the whole purpose of this series, because we are so focused on trying to be coupled and booed up and get the ring and the dress and this and that, and we have so much unpacked trauma. You don't wait until you find somebody and you get with somebody to deal with your trauma. You deal with it before so that you can show up whole, healed, and complete. Because listen, in marriage, in relationships, in marriage, it's going to come with its own set of issues. You got two people, two individuals that are becoming one. That's by itself is going to cause friction. You don't need additional baggage by way of things that you haven't dealt with. Okay. And it's worth dealing with it first. It's worth sitting in your singleness or your single againness and unpacking all of the things from your childhood up through teenage years, young adulthood, past relationships, marriage, who you attracted, who you entertained, all of those things. It is important. Okay. I want to read this. Okay. In America, we have a painful divorce rate of roughly 40 to 50%. Why is this? We have men growing up that don't know how to be husbands and fathers. We have women who are attempting to heal father issues with marriage and think it is acceptable to remain in abusive relationships. We have broken boys in shells of men leading broken relationships. We have wounded women looking for male approval in marriage. The cycle of pain and brokenness is perpetuated because marriage is viewed as a contract rather than a covenant. The pain from neglect, abuse, addiction, or the absence of a father takes its toll on the marriage relationship. I have seen too many men and women run into marriage without addressing the pain from their own father wound or mother wound. We have men who were never shown how to love a woman as an equal co-laborer. We have women who were never shown how to be loved by a man. And I would venture to say, loved properly, loved properly, loved properly by a man. We have couples that are retaliating against each other from wounds neither of them inflicted on each other. The divorce rate results speak for themselves. So, my beloveds, this is why it is important for us to, yes, unpack our trauma, deal with our stuff, and take the energy that we exert in trying to find or be found by a woman or a man, and keep that same energy in taking care of ourselves, mind, body, heart, soul, and spirit. My throat is dry. I believe that it is the only way that we are going to shift the narrative and shift the divorce rate that is prevalent first time marriage, second marriages, third marriages. It's the only way. It's the only way. When we understand covenants versus contracts, when we heal our own wounds and unpack the trauma and sit in front of someone that can help us make sense, when we can reconcile our hurt and our past pain with our parents, whether they are alive or not, whether they will receive it or not. It's difficult. It's hard. But I'm a living witness that it can be done. It can be done. Am I married yet? No, I'm not. But I'm in a good, healthy place. Even with all of the things that I dealt with the last couple of years, I dealt with them. I went to counseling. I did what I needed to do. And I'm still a work in progress. I'm always learning. I'm always evolving. I'm always growing. And that's what we should be doing as we wait and enjoy our lives. Let us be as diligent in searching and making sure that we are healed and whole as we are as trying to be booed up. Because I always tell people divorce, it's not fun. It's not fun. There's nothing to play with. It's very, very painful. And it's avoidable if we just do the work and not look at and be focused on relationship goals and seeing couples who are only showing us highlight reels and couples that are only giving the happy moments because they want to create this image, this statue, this idol, this thing of just happiness and not given the work that comes with it and the travail that comes with it and in all of the things that can happen that comes with it. But it's still beautiful, but it still has a cost, it still has a price, it still has a lot that is not always fun, but it represents Christ in the church, and we know what he did for us, and that's what we ought to do with and for one another. So that was the missing piece for this week. Father wounds and mommy scars. I hope that this has been enlightening. I hope that it has been thought provoking. I hope that it has sown good seed on good ground, and that it will cultivate your hearts and your minds, and that from it conversations will grow. There will be counseling sessions booked. There will be thoughtful, meaningful, loving conversations with parents. And that we will be gentle with our children. And that we will be gentle, those of us who have children, gentle with our children, gentle with other people's children, gentle with other people, just gentle with other people. I'm going to say it again. We got to get out of this thing where we are so judgmental towards people because their sin looks different than ours. Because whatever they got caught up in or whatever they did, oh, I would never do that. And because I don't understand and this, that, and that. Because God has a way of humbling us when we get too high up here, that we look down on people that may find themselves in compromising positions, and we find ourselves feeling like we are a hierarchy when it comes to sin and salvation and things like that. And God has a way of kind of bumping us down to show us where we really are and to put us to the test to see if we can handle the things that we scorn and judge. Like I said earlier, it's not always because people want to do the things that they do. A lot of it is trauma that hasn't been dealt with. So yeah, next week I don't remember what I'm doing next week for next week's, but we're continuing on with the missing piece. I left my notepad in the other room, so I can't remember what we're talking about. But we're talking about another missing piece. I want us coming out of this healed. Listen, it's April 9th. Next thing you know, it's going to be May. By the time this is over, it's going to be May. It's going to be warm outside. It's going to be popping. It's going to be things opening up. And I've been talking a whole year, 2 seasons about us getting our entire life in order so that when outside opens, we ready to go. We ready to go. Okay, we ready to go. We ready to be out here living our best life, but we're doing it from a place of just being mentally equipped and emotionally sound. Okay, emotionally sound to be able to handle somebody slide up and be like, listen, I want to take you out on a date, I want to get to know you, or you get the courage to say it to somebody else, like whatever it is, that we will be in a place to be healed and whole and doing the work within ourselves first, and then going out to venture and look for or be found by our life partner, our purpose partner, boo, whatever. I didn't know you was in Georgia. There's so many people in Georgia. Okay. All right. I'm going to pray us out because I just feel the need to pray because I feel like this was just a lot of heavy stuff. I'm going to pray that we're going to close. Okay. So as we say in church, all hearts and mind clear. Amen. Let us pray. Gracious God, we thank you for this day, God. We thank you for allowing us to see another day, God. We thank you for allowing us to live through this pandemic, God. We thank you for allowing us to just open up our eyes today because we know that tomorrow is not promised and every day is a gift. Father, I thank you for this session, this episode on this podcast that you created, that you are curating. Thank you for giving me the vision to talk about missing pieces in our lives, God. You have a desire, Lord, to see us healed and whole because you have so many promises that you have given us. You have so many things for us. There are so many things that you are waiting to drop in our lap, but you want to make sure that we are ready to receive them because they're so great and they're so marvelous and they're just so wonderful that you do not want us to scramble over what you have given us. You don't want us to mess it up, God, because a lot of us have waited and we're praying and we're seeking you and we're sowing and we're living right and we're doing all that we know to do so that we can obtain the blessings that you have for us, not because we just want to obtain them, but because we legit want to live for you, God. So I pray, God, that this night, this episode where we're talking about father wounds and mommy scars, God, I pray, Lord, that it be an episode that we can regurgitate and eat again and feast off of it and do some soul searching and have conversations with you and pray to you and ask you to give us the courage to talk to our parents, God, reconcile, do whatever it is that we need to do to get our healing, God, and that you would be with those, God, who may have tried but failed, God. Thank you for leading them to the safe places where they can unpack their trauma, unpack whatever it is, the pain and the anguish that they have dealt with, God, so that they can be husbands, good husbands, great husbands and wives, better husbands and wives, better mothers and fathers, so that we can stop the cycle of trauma in our families and we can rear up and grow wonderful men who know how to love you and love their wives and wonderful women who know how to love you and love and respect their husbands, and that they will be healed and whole in themselves, that they will seek to be a whole person first rather than running and trying to chase the dream of a wedding and a marriage and all of those things. and they will allow it to happen when you say that it happened. So, God, I thank you for this time. I thank you, Lord, for giving me the opportunity to speak and pour into those who are listening, whether it's live or on the replay. And we love you, God, and we thank you. And we ask again, God, that you be with the family of Needle and Charles and with our beloved brother, Earl Simmons, otherwise known as DMX. We love you and we thank you and we praise you and we give you all of the honor, the praise, and the glory in Jesus' name. Amen. So, this, I want you to look at my shirt. I'm going to move this. I want you to look at my shirt. The shirt says, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Hashtag, I can't see. Hashtag, be kind. Hashtag, stronger together. Let's be kind to one another, okay? If anything that we've learned this week is that we don't know what people are going through. We don't know what people are going through. We don't know what people are suffering with. Let's be kind to one another. Even if you know about somebody's transgressions and imperfections, be kind. Be kind, because you don't know when your time is coming where you're going to need the same grace and mercy that the other person is needing. We're stronger together. So let's check up on one another. Let's be there for one another. Let's support one another. And that is it. So have a great weekend. Drink your water. Mind your business. Tell somebody you love them. And I love you all. And I will see you all next week. Peace out.